Yeah, so I mean that's a number of the issues laid out. I know there's a bunch of other ones, but I think people might be interested in your story. How did you come to get involved in men's rights issues? I mean, it seems like you were sort of way ahead of the curve with most people, the relatively small number that have gotten interested or on board with this sort of activity.
Yeah, I was an early adapter. If I might, I'll just mention one last thing about the workplace briefly. Um, Sexual misbehavior in the office. We leave out sexual exploitation by females. If a female is harassed into sex for a promotion or to keep a job or whatever, that's awful. But what we leave out is women exploiting their sexuality for advantage, either to cry so they don't get as harsh a punishment if they screwed up, or to be flirtatious or even sexual to gain better work or an advancement. It's not just one or the other that's ought to be examined. It's both. In terms of me, yeah, as a bit of a story here. I'll try to keep it brief because it was a long journey. Uh, I was always a nice guy, and
Real nice Canadian guy, eh? Don't mean to offend you, eh? You know?
yeah, exactly. So I went to university straight out of high school. That was in 1971, and feminism was kind of starting to get going up here. And I was part of this group, and well, not just the group, but started to hear about feminism. And so I heard women say, why can't men do stuff with kids and why can't women be in the workplace more? And that made at least some sense to me. But the one that really resonated was when they criticized men who were macho. And as a nice guy, that just struck home with me because I would see guys who would, kind of walk around like this, bark at everybody, interrupt people constantly, never listen, never apologize, never admit they were wrong. And I thought,
Yeah, I've met a
wow,
few people like that.
yeah, exactly. Exactly. I thought, oh, women don't like that. That's great. So I thought I'm on board.
So you
Uh,
were a feminist back in the day.
Yeah, I was a male feminist from, let's say, beginning of the second term of first half university. So roughly January 72. Lasted for, I lost track a little bit, but about a year and a half. So even if we round it off to 2 years, that would be, I was out of it by end of 73 or let's say 74. So it's coming 50 years now. The reason I got out of it is that once they wanted to expand the conversation. This is, I guess it'd be feminists, I'd have to say. Once they wanted to expand the conversation to beyond female equal rights in the workplace, or equal rights as they described it, I thought the next obvious thing would be equal child custody. Again, for all the reasons we gave earlier. If you're working, you're not going to be at home, no reason to have a pro mother bias. Well, instead of that, they went to abortion rights. And I'm going like, WTF? That shouldn't be the next thing on the agenda. It should be child custody. And in conjunction with that failure, I started to notice they weren't just opposed to like macho guys. There was a general animus. I would have to say, looking back, there was a hatred. It was hate based. And then the final thing, and this just drove me mental, uh, they said they hated those, that these macho guys were oppressive and they're awful, which I agreed. But those are the guys they went to bed with. So I'm thinking, that dog don't hunt. This don't make sense. That don't make no, never mind. So I'm thinking, no, there's something wrong with this. And amongst those things, on even worse today, are the things that persist today. So let's say by end of 73, or to round it off, let's say beginning of 74, because by then I was out for sure. I was out and started to see all the flaws. I read a book in 1974 or 5 called The Hazards of Being Male, Surviving the Myth of Masculine Privilege by a fellow by the name of Herb Goldberg, and that opened my eyes a fair amount. And then as time went on and things got more and more and more extreme, it sort of became more and more obvious. Um, got a bit of a reputation when I got into law school, even by first year university. There was a guy in first year who was dating a girl in first year, but he was a pretty open-minded guy. And I think he had sided with his girlfriend, who was very feminist. And he asked me about my views. So this would have been in, pardon me, well, first year law was 78 or 79. So let's say by 79s, 44, maybe 45 years ago. He asked me my views and he listened to them. And he said, "Oh," he says, "I see your problem. You're 10 years ahead of the times." Well, that was 45 years ago. And I'd say, if anything, things have gotten worse for men, not better. But we certainly haven't made the progress that we need to match the gains that women have made in our areas of disadvantage. So there was all that. The personal impact it had on me is that I became kind of anti-marriage for myself. I guess that would be maybe a bit of a MGTOW dimension, but it's the marital laws got worse and worse and worse and worse in terms of property on divorce, and the amount of maintenance that was expected, and so on, and all this stuff with
Needing alimony.
yeah, exactly, yeah, all that. I thought, no, this isn't a takeable deal. So I made a point in my entire life. I've neither been married nor cohabited, and I felt that was the way I had to go. So yeah, so that's the impact that it had on me as time went by. Oh, I guess a major point for me, and it's part of what we're discussing today. My best course, my highest grade in law school, believe it or not, was jurisprudence, legal philosophy,
Hmm.
and I had a bit of a knack for it, if one can have a knack for such a thing. And what I did in the main paper for that course was to develop kind of my own little legal theory about how rights work generally, and specifically how they apply between the sexes. And I call it classic rights. Fundamental rights are things like in the Constitution, right against search and seizure by the government, right against arbitrary detention. You need due process, proof beyond a reasonable doubt, like all that stuff. But classic rights are the ones that I was describing earlier, where to get paid for a job, you actually have to do the job. So classic rights are rights that come with responsibilities.
Hmm.
And I agree with Jordan Peterson on this, although there's lots I don't agree with him on, and that is the responsibility. Well, at one level, it's simply the other side of the coin as a right. The responsibility usually comes slightly ahead of the right, in that you do the job and then you get paid. Like, they don't pay you, you don't start a job, they'll pay you for the next 2 weeks and then you show up. You do your 2 weeks and then they pay you. So you're earning the money as you go. So the right is accruing, but you don't get paid until the end of some time period. And excuse me. And a lot of that has been lost. Instead, what seems to have happened, it's when it comes to females in the workplace, it's all say in especially when it gets to things like uh, equal numbers. It's almost more like a constitutional fundamental right. Like, that they have kind of a right to have half of the best jobs rather than it has to be earned through taking responsibility.
I hope you enjoyed this clip from my interview with Don Lofendale. If you did, please leave a like on the video. And if you'd like to see more interesting content, hit that subscribe button and the notification bell. If you'd like to watch the full interview, you can find it right here. Thanks for coming by, and I hope everybody has a great day.